Imagine descending into the absolute darkest depths of the earth, leaving behind the sun, the wind, and every human voice you have ever known. Deep within, a colossal subterranean cavern, lies a specialized facility designed for total isolation, where the only connection to the surface world is the cold, mechanical hum of a one-way printer. For those desperate enough to take the high-paying contract, the job description seems straightforward: operate a massive automated drilling rig and meet a daily depth quota. But beneath the layers of industrial propaganda and fluorescent lights lies a suffocating silence that slowly chips away at a person's sanity. It is a place where you are utterly alone, cut off from help, and entirely dependent on the instructions that print out in the dead of night. The journey begins at the absolute bottom of a monumental pit, a jagged abyss carved deep into the crust of the earth where the air feels heavy, stagnant, and entirely devoid of life. Here, a newly contracted worker steps out into their designated living quarters, a sterile bunker defined by the harsh, unblinking glare of overhead fluorescent lights and cold concrete walls plastered with patriotic corporate propaganda. The atmosphere is immediately oppressive, establishing an unsettling sense of total confinement from the moment. The heavy steel entrance doors hiss shut and lock from the outside. There are no windows to witness the passage of day and night, no active communication lines to call for external assistance, and absolutely no way to return to the surface world, leaving the operator completely stranded in a subterranean cage where their only companion is the echo of their own breathing strewn across the metallic floor. Our official documents out the precise parameters of the assignment, urging the worker to ignore the isolation and focus entirely on the prosperous future that supposedly awaits them upon completion. The primary objective is revealed through a freshly printed set of instructions emerging from a one-way fax machine. The operator must input a security passcode into a complex control panel to initialize a massive, unseen automated drilling mechanism. According to the company's welcoming literature, this initial phase is merely a basic training protocol to familiarize the worker with the array of dials and indicators, allowing them to easily surpass their first daily depth quota. With the small sleeping quarters unlocked and the initial task effortlessly completed, the worker retires for the evening, completely unaware of the creeping dread that is quietly beginning to settle into the darkest corners of the concrete room. As dawn breaks on the second day, a conceptual morning, marked only by the sudden, jarring screech of the fax machine, the operator is greeted by a new set of directives concerning the harsh realities of subterranean labor. The automated printer warns that volatile gas storms are an incredibly common occurrence in this specific geological sector, instructing the worker to keep the main facility hatches tightly sealed at all times to avoid lethal atmospheric contamination. The monotony of the routine quickly sets in as the operator watches the digital dials spin, adjusting various levers and calibrations to ensure the heavy machinery continues its relentless descent into the solid rock below. The work demands absolute, unwavering focus, transforming the sterile bunker into a claustrophobic cockpit where every flicker of a light bulb feels amplified by the crushing weight of the miles of earth. Pressing down from above, the complexity of the task increases dramatically when the automated system alerts the operator to a sudden, critical depletion in the primary power cells. Following the strict corporate protocol provided by the printer, the worker must navigate to a secure storage bay, retrieve a massive industrial battery, and haul it over to the edge of an imposing, dark borehole situated in an adjacent chamber. By attaching the heavy power unit to a mechanical crane, they carefully lower it down into the pitch-black void, watching the steel cables unravel into the endless depths until the main control panel successfully registers a full electrical charge. It feels like a triumph of human engineering, a perfectly synchronized dance between man and machine that keeps the corporate engine running smoothly in the dark, giving the worker a brief sense of accomplishment in their profound isolation. The third day introduces a terrifying new variable to the daily routine as the promised atmospheric storms begin to violently ravage the outer perimeter of the underground structure. The intense vibrations of the unseen drill rattle the steel beams of the bunker, causing microscopic fractures to spread rapidly across the aging pipes and reinforced concrete walls. The operator receives an urgent, redinct notification detailing the extreme dangers of structural corrosion, which can trigger sudden, localized breaches that allow highly toxic environmental gases to flood the living quarters without warning. Armed with emergency patching tools and industrial sealants, the worker is forced to sprint across the room, desperately sealing hissing cracks and fixing structural leaks, before the limited air supply becomes completely unbreathable. Amidst the chaos of managing the toxic leaks, the operator must simultaneously balance an increasingly complex array of mechanical variables on the main control console to prevent a total system failure. Dials, monitoring internal temperatures, rotational speeds, and complex engine fluids fluctuate wildly, requiring constant, frantic manual adjustments to keep the entire operation from seizing up entirely. Whenever the unseen apparatus stalls due to pressure buildups, the worker must execute a precise sequence of manual overrides to force a hard restart, all while a ticking clock threatens severe financial penalties for failing to meet the daily distance quota. At the end of the grueling shift, the printer delivers a glowing evaluation, reminding the worker that their intense physical sacrifices are monumental victories for the glory and progress of the nation above. Despite the constant corporate reassurances and automated praise, the crushing isolation begins to foster a deep, inescapable sense of paranoia as the operator notices things that do not entirely align with logic. While conducting a routine inspection of the bunker's perimeter walls during a rare moment of quiet, the worker notices a faint glint of graphite hidden behind a loose metal panel far from the main console. Peering closer with a flashlight, they uncover a highly unsettling handwritten inscription scratched directly into the concrete by an anonymous individual who occupied the bunker prior to their arrival. The note reveals a disturbing observation. The previous operator noticed that despite weeks of continuous high-speed drilling, the digital depth indicators always reset to show they were merely starting from the very beginning of the project. This hidden discovery sends a chill through the operator's veins, raising fundamental, terrifying questions about the true nature of the operation they are participating in. If a vast succession of laborers had been stationed in this exact pit before them, the borehole should realistically extend deep into the mantle of the earth, yet the system strictly registers their starting point at just over 100 meters down. The anonymous writer notes that they chose to ignore the mathematical impossibility and simply did what they were told, out of fear. But for the current operator, the illusion of a standard mining operation begins to shatter completely. The heavy silence of the cavern suddenly feels less like a legitimate industrial workplace and more like a carefully constructed theater designed to deceive anyone trapped inside it. The passage of days blurs into a seamless, exhausting cycle of mechanical maintenance and escalating anxiety. As the environmental hazards within the pit become progressively worse, the toxic gas breaches grow more frequent and severe, forcing the operator to constantly divide their frantic attention between personal survival and the rigid production quotas demanded by the machine. The control panel becomes an absolute nightmare of blinking alarms and shrill warning tones, demanding simultaneous management of battery voltage, soaring engine temperatures, and fluctuating RPMs. Yet, through all of this chaos, the faceless management above remains completely silent, offering absolutely no real-time human support and providing nothing but automated words of encouragement that feel increasingly hollow and sinister. It becomes glaringly obvious to the worker that the corporation is deliberately withholding vital information regarding the history of the facility and the ultimate fate of those who built it. The operator begins to wonder about the physical absence of any structural wear from past gas storms, realizing that the bunker shows no signs of long-term degradation despite the allegedly volatile environment. Every automated report praises their unwavering compliance and dedication to duty. Yet the complete lack of genuine human contact creates a psychological vacuum where the mind begins to play tricks. The worker is left with the agonizing realization that they are completely disposable, a mere biological component in an elaborate, highly secretive machine that values data and quotas far more than human life. A profound breakthrough occurs on the 9th consecutive day of isolation, completely disrupting the suffocating routine of the bunker's daily operation and shifting the investigation into a dangerous new territory. While attempting to clean a thick layer of industrial grime near the communal water cooler, the operator notices a small, weathered piece of folded paper wedged tightly beneath the plastic base. Pulling it free, they discover a highly personal handwritten message, addressed to an unfamiliar name, Iron. The letter, written by an anxious loved one on the surface world, expresses immense pride in Iron's extended corporate contract and eagerly anticipates his return as a celebrated national hero. Crucially, a frantic postscript warns Iron to keep the correspondence completely hidden from management and notes a specific 4-digit sequence written on the reverse side. Armed with this newfound clue, the operator desperately scours every square inch of the living quarters for anything that might correspond to the mysterious numbers tucked away in a dark, forgotten recess beneath the main sleeping cot. They locate a heavy steel safe that had previously blended perfectly into the shadows of the concrete floor. With trembling hands and a racing heart, the worker inputs the 4-digit combination into the mechanical lock, holding their breath as a heavy, metallic click echoes through the silent room. The reinforced door swings open to reveal a cache of hidden personal documents, a collection of forbidden diaries penned by Iron himself during his lengthy, undocumented tenure at the bottom of the world. The contents of the recovered journals paint a devastating, terrifying portrait of a man driven to the absolute brink of psychological ruin by the horrors of total isolation. Iron describes how the crushing loneliness eventually forced him to steal blank paper from the printer to document his thoughts, desperately clinging to his own fading identity. As the months bled together, he writes about accidental exposure to the toxic subterranean gases during an unsealed storm, detailing hours of violent illness and questioning how a legitimate company could legally subject a human being to such atrocious conditions. Most disturbingly, Iron notes that the drilling machinery on the left side was losing power rapidly, leaving him terrified of what horrific consequences might occur if the system completely stopped. As the operator devours the handwritten pages, a horrifying realization begins to take shape regarding the true timeline of the facility and the lies they have been told. Iron reveals that despite spending an absolute eternity trapped within the confines of the concrete bunker, his records show he only managed to advance the drill a mere 68 meters. Furthermore, the diary contains a highly cryptic, terrifying observation. Iron firmly believed that the toxic gas storms ravaging the facility were not natural atmospheric anomalies at all, but were instead being actively inflicted upon someone else. The journal ends abruptly in a chaotic scrawl, leaving no explanation as to where Iron went, why his contract was extended, or what horrific truth he had ultimately uncovered before his sudden disappearance. Before the operator can fully process the terrifying implications of Iron's diaries, the main control console suddenly erupts into a violent frenzy of flashing crimson warning lights. A harsh, mechanical siren pierces the silence of the bunker as the printer frantically spits out a high-priority, automated alert from corporate management. According to the emergency broadcast, the primary subterranean machinery has suffered a catastrophic catalytic failure, an industrial term that sounds completely nonsensical and fabricated within the context of standard mechanical engineering. The automated directive issues a mandatory, non-negotiable order. The operator must immediately board the heavy maintenance elevator and descend directly down into the pitch-black abyss of the borehole to execute a manual repair. Driven by a desperate survival instinct and the deeply ingrained habit of compliance, the worker rushes toward the edge of the yawning chasm in the floor. They secure the mechanical platform to the heavy industrial crane, the very same apparatus they had used to lower massive power cells into the darkness day after day. Stepping onto the cold, vibrating metal grate of the elevator, the operator pulls the manual lever, setting the platform into a slow, rattling descent into the terrifying depths of the earth. As the familiar fluorescent lights of the living quarters vanish overhead, the air grows thick with the stench of rust and decay, the absolute darkness of the pit swallowing them whole as they plunge toward a destiny they cannot possibly escape. The rattling descent feels endless, a slow journey into a subterranean purgatory, where the only sound is the agonizing screech of metal cables stretching under immense weight. To the operator's absolute bewilderment, faint industrial lights begin to flicker along the jagged rock walls of the borehole, illuminating a path that should theoretically be completely untouched by human hands. When the elevator finally grinds to a heavy, shuddering halt at the absolute bottom of the chasm, the worker steps out onto the damp earth, their boots splashing in a thick, dark, pooling liquid. The beam of their flashlight cuts through the heavy mist, illuminating an unspeakable nightmare that instantly shatters every remaining illusion of reality. Lying slumped against the cold stone floor directly ahead is the decomposing corpse of a man, his flesh pale and ruined by months of unimaginable physical suffering. Affixed directly to the skin of his bare back is a complex network of heavy electrical nodes and copper wiring, branching out like a parasitic organism hooked into the facility's power grid. Next to the body lies a rusted manual shovel, a small pile of empty battery casings, and a final, desperate note written in a frantic, trembling script. The note bears a name that makes the operator's heart stop. Iron Jasp. The message reveals a truth so profoundly sadistic that it defies the boundaries of human comprehension. The final, agonizing puzzle pieces lock into place as the operator reads Iron's dying words, realizing with absolute horror that there was never a drill. The entire facility was a psychological facade, a monstrous closed-loop experiment designed to facilitate one of the most inhumane acts of torture imaginable. The fluctuating RPMs, the rising temperatures, and the mechanical battery levels the operator had spent days meticulously monitoring were not metrics of a machine, but the vital life signs of Iron Jaskell himself. Every button pressed to increase power sent agonizing electrical currents through the nodes on Iron's back, shocking him out of exhaustion, and forcing his failing heart to beat faster so he would continue digging the pit by hand with a basic shovel. The toxic gas storms were nothing more than a calculated method to synchronize the suffering, forcing the operator above to unconsciously manipulate the life support systems of the victim below just to keep them alive a fraction longer. Iron had spent his entire deployment unknowingly torturing the worker who came before him, just as the current operator had spent their contract systematically destroying Iron until his body finally collapsed into cardiac arrest. A sudden, heavy metallic clang echoes through the cavern as the maintenance elevator is abruptly retracted toward the ceiling, leaving the operators stranded in the pitch-black tomb alongside Iron's corpse. The realization washes over them in the suffocating dark. The automated system has already registered the vacancy. The printer upstairs is preparing a contract for a new hire, and they are now eternally trapped at the bottom of the world to become the next living machine. The dark places of the world do not merely hide secrets. Sometimes they cultivate a cycle of suffering so profound that humanity itself becomes the fuel for the machine. We walk through our lives believing we are the authors of our own progress, entirely blind to the hidden strings pulling us into the abyss. There are no heroes at the bottom of the pit. Only an endless line of souls trading their morality for survival in a dark room that never sleeps. The machinery will always demand a fresh pair of hands to turn the wheel, and the silence below will gladly wait for the next worker to arrive. When the lights finally go out, you will realize too late that the monster you were running from was the reflection in the glass.